did you switch to Sony? And what in the world are you doing with the A1? And did Sony back the money truck up to your house and give you a bunch of money to start using Sony gear? No, none of that happened. I'm not sponsored by anybody, unfortunately.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. It really makes me wonder. Ooh, I wonder.
Here it is, all my stuff. This is my current camera gear situation, which is a little bit chaotic. Hence the name of the video, Chaos in my camera bag. And the chaos is due to me being confused about what to do. If I'm confused about what to do, I know some of you are confused about what to do. I've been getting a lot of direct messages and questions about what in the world I'm doing, since people have seen me out in the field a lot lately using this, the Sony A1. And that has thrown my camera gear situation into a bit of a tizzy. So it actually kind of started last winter when I rented a Canon R5 and took it up to Yellowstone for a week to do photography up in the winter in Yellowstone. And I really enjoyed using it. The autofocus system was incredible. Light years better than my Nikon Z cameras. This is the Z7 II. I'm currently shooting this video with the Z6 II, which the autofocus system on the Z7 II is great for things that are standing still. The Z6 II works better for things that are moving, but neither one of them comes even remotely close to the autofocus abilities of the Canon R5, or even better, in my opinion, of the Sony A1. So that's thrown me into chaos. I've always been a Nikon shooter since I started shooting. I love the Nikon system. I really enjoy using Nikon cameras. The ergonomics are wonderful. The menu systems, I'm used to them. They're familiar. They seem to work really well. I just love the way the cameras feel. I like the materials they use. The build quality feels excellent. The buttons, the knobs, everything seems to work. The problem with the Canon that I used, which had an excellent autofocus system, great camera, amazing camera, but two things that were throwing me off out there that was causing me to miss photos. Very often we have to make photos like that. You don't have time to like set up and do your thing and adjust. It's just happening, and things need to happen automatically in your head and your muscle memory. And when I would go to zoom in on something with the Canon, it zooms the wrong way to what I'm used to when I shoot Nikon or Fuji, which I've been shooting for a long time as well. So Canon zooms the wrong way for me, so I would find myself trying to zoom in, and I would actually zoom out accidentally, and I would miss shots. The other thing that Canon does is when I'm on the shutter button and I want to change my aperture, I roll my finger forward on Nikon. I have to roll it backwards on Canon. So those two things were giving me enough headaches that I either had to, if I wanted to use that system, I would have to commit to, I'd say, at least several months of completely retraining myself to do backwards zooming and backwards finger roll. So those two things may seem insignificant to you, but I'm out shooting whatever, say 5 days a week for the last decade. I'm used to doing it this way, and it's going to take some serious effort to retrain myself. And I wasn't willing to go through that at the time. But seeing how much better that autofocus system was for their mirrorless autofocus than Nikon's mirrorless, I decided to, right at that same time, Sony announced the A1. And Sony zooms the same direction as Nikon. So when I want to zoom in on something, boom, it's like, it's second nature, I know it. When I need to adjust my aperture on Sony, boom, my finger rolls forward. So Sony had that big advantage going for it. And then the A1 was announced, and the specifications honestly were, to me, a bit unbelievable. when they announced that it would do 30 frames per second, 50 megapixels, their kind of science fiction-like autofocus system, silent shutter with virtually no rolling shutter. It sounded pretty incredible. So I didn't quite believe that it was going to all work the way it does, or that they said it would, and it does. So it's been an incredible camera I've been using for the last few months. But at any rate, once they announced that A1, and I had decided that I needed to kind of step up my autofocus situation with mirrorless, it was like Canon R5 or Sony A1, and I decided to go Sony. Now, I couldn't get that A1 right away. They're very hard to get at the time. So what I did is I bought a used Sony A9 II, which is almost identical body, different sensor, but very similar autofocus system. Similar in a lot of ways, but I wanted to get used to using the Sony system and use it before I got the A1 to make sure I really wanted to do that. So I bought the A9 II and this 200 to 600 millimeter lens, and I just started using it to try and, kind of train myself, because even though it zooms the right way and my finger goes the right way to adjust aperture, the dials are in different locations, the buttons are in different spots, the menu systems are completely different. A lot of the terminology, completely confusing to me. It's all new, different than Nikon. So I had a lot to learn and a lot to start getting used to. And I wanted to make sure that I would be able to get used to those changes before I dropped $6,500 on the A1. So I used that A9 II and the 200 to 600 for a while. It worked wonderfully. And then finally, the guys at Pictureline, Colin, was able to get me this Sony A1. And Pictureline out of Salt Lake City. They're my favorite camera shop. But anyway, I knew once I had used this Sony system that I would be able to use the Sony A1 and that it would work great for me. So once that was available, I got that, and then I also bought this 100 to 400 millimeter lens. And that 100 to 400 millimeter focal length is kind of my, like if I had to pick one lens to go out and run around and do the type of photography I like to do, that's the lens that I could find most versatile and do most of what I want to do out there. So I bought that, and then I started selling my Nikon gear. So I sold a bunch of my Nikon gear. I kept the 600 f4 because Nikon has announced the Z9, and that Z9 they have said is going to be a direct competitor to the Sony A1 with very similar specifications. I would prefer a Nikon Z9 if it had the technology of the A1. I prefer the ergonomics of Nikon, the way things feel, the way the buttons, dials lay out, the menu systems, the terminology. I'm way more familiar with Nikon. I enjoy using the Nikon mirrorless cameras more than I enjoy using these, aside from the technology in this Sony stuff just makes image making easier in some ways. So I enjoy the technology, but I enjoy the ergonomics of Nikon a lot better. So if I could kind of melt those two into a Z9, I'm just back to Nikon, almost certainly. So I've kept the 600 f4, I've kept the Nikon 300 millimeter f4 PF lens, which is an F-mount lens. This is the adapter on there for the Z-mount. And then I have some Z glass. I have the 14 to 30, the 24 to 70, which is on there, a 50 millimeter 1.8, which is what I use to photograph my kids. And then I kept this Tamron 100 to 400, which is a Nikon F-mount as well. So that's currently my Nikon kit. So it's pared way down, two camera bodies, Z6 II, Z7 II, and then those lenses that I just mentioned. If the Z9 comes and it does things as well as the A1, I will invest in some more Z-mount glass. It's all been fantastic. I've also got this 24 to 200 millimeter hyper versatile walk-around lens in the Z-mount as well. So what I have done since I got into the Sony system and found out that it works really well for me, I've bought a few more lenses. I bought the 55mm 1.8, which is a wonderful lens, mostly for photographing my kids. There it is compared to Nikon's version, so it's smaller and lighter. Image quality wise, the Nikon's a little bit better if you ask me, but this is really excellent. So I don't know, it's kind of I wouldn't probably be able to tell the difference unless I was looking at them side by side, but they're both excellent. This one's just a little smaller and lighter. The 200 to 600 millimeter lens was the first one I bought. This 100 to 400 has kind of been my favorite focal length in the past with this on Nikon. So I had to buy that lens. It's wonderful. I sold my Nikon F-mount 70 to 200 f2.8, and I felt a little weird not having a 70 to 200 f2.8. So what I did is I bought Tamron's 70 to 180 2.8. So I'm sacrificing 20 millimeters on the long end, but it's 2.8, excellent image quality, very small, very light. So I prefer this just because of the size and the weight difference over if I had bought the Sony 70 to 200 f2.8. So this was only $1,100 brand new. If you buy it, you can find them used for a lot less than that. And wonderful lens. So that in itself is like a good thing for the Sony system. They only make this for the Sony system. And then I bought a 28 to 200 millimeter Tamron, which is just a wonderful walk-around lens, very similar to Nikon's 24 to 200. A little bit smaller, a little bit lighter. Doesn't go quite as wide on the long end, but excellent image quality for what it is, for a walk-around, just kind of super zoom. So been very happy with that so far as well. Oh, and then this. Oh, isn't she lovely? This is the Sony 400 2.8. Very expensive lens, very lightweight. For a 400 2.8, it's incredible how light it is, how easy it is to handhold. That's a pretty big advantage Sony has over Nikon, is the weight of their big glass is definitely way lighter than Nikon's. So this currently has a teleconverter on it, which will make this a 560 millimeter f4. I can't really, image quality between this at 560 f4 and this at 600 f4, I don't know if I can tell the difference. Maybe I probably could if I had them both side by side and really dug in. But excellent image quality with the teleconverter. Obviously, excellent image quality without the teleconverter. Autofocus is fast, quiet, lovely. No complaints at all. I also have the 2x teleconverter. I do notice some degradation of image quality when I'm using the 2x, but I can definitely make images with that at 800 millimeters f5.6 that are certainly acceptable, just not quite as just bitingly sharp as the bare lens itself. So that's my Sony situation. I don't have the high-end wide-angle stuff because for the moment I still would rather, for landscapes and stuff, I have the Fuji GFX system, which I'll talk about in a second. But honestly, this Nikon Z7 II with the Z lenses is so great that I don't feel any need to buy the stuff for Sony. Some of their wide-angle zooms are 24 to 70 2.8, they're 12 to 24 2.8, that kind of stuff. Because I'm still happy using the Nikon system for that. When the time comes, which will be in about 6 months, I'm going to make a decision to either go full Nikon or full Sony. At that point, I will make that decision and buy those high-end, the trinity of zooms there for the Sony system if I go Sony, or I'll figure out what to do with the Nikon stuff as well. And then I've currently also got the GFX system over here, which right now is the GFX 50R, 100 to 200 millimeter lens, 45 to 100 millimeter lens, 32 to 64 millimeter lens, and then their wide angle 23 millimeter prime. So camera, 4 lenses, that's my GFX. This is, I love using the Fuji system. This is the best image quality out of any of this stuff, without a doubt. But this stuff keeps getting better. You know, this A1 and the Z7 II with their 45 to 50 megapixel sensors. Very similar image quality to the 50 megapixel sensor in here. I still think this is better image quality. The lenses, I believe, are better than all of this other stuff, but marginally. So I'm in a bit of a conundrum here because this stuff is getting so good, these Z lenses especially are getting so good that, you know, the gap is shrinking between how the image quality of the Fuji GFX and this stuff. So I'd still prefer to keep this stuff. I just love using it. Maximum image quality, definitely not made for sports, action, wildlife. But when I want to take the time, slow down, and make the best possible image I can make, when I have the time to do that, this is my go-to. This is a little bit up in the air right now because in 5 or 6 months, when Nikon announces, or when they release the Z9, I'm going to have to spend another $6,500 to buy that thing to decide if it's as good as the A1, and I want to go Nikon. You know, like, I have budget constraints, like there's a lot of money sitting right here, and I've spent way too much money on camera gear, like most of you as well. But it'll be harder and harder to justify this money sitting there when I need to spend $6,500 on another excellent camera that honestly gets way more use than this stuff in my world. So I have a feeling this stuff, its time is limited, and it will probably be going away. So I don't know, it's just getting harder and harder to justify the image quality difference that I get out of that system, which it's definitely still there. It's better image quality, but is it good enough, different enough to justify having that whole separate system? I'm getting to that point where I'm not so sure. So anyway, this is my conundrum right now. The Nikon Z9, they've announced it. Nikon has historically, they have excellent engineers, obviously. You know, the kind of rumor mill, the whiners on the internet are all saying Nikon's going to go out of business. They're not doing anything. They're done for. I think that's all BS. I think Nikon is working very hard, and they historically, when they work hard on something, they usually deliver. So you look back to, like, you know, the Nikon D3. Canon was smoking everybody. Nikon came out with the D3, smoked everybody, totally changed the game. Nikon had a long drought there where everybody's whining for a new kind of pro-level DX camera. You know, the D300, the D300S, and then nothing happened for years, and everybody was complaining Nikon's failing. They came out with the D500, blew everybody away. It was a total game changer. Sports action, wildlife, DX camera. Nikon, then same thing, Nikon's falling behind again. You know, Canon's got that 5D Mark whatever, and, you know, Nikon is sitting on their butts doing nothing. And then they announced the D850. D850 blew everybody away. I just sold my D850s. They served me amazingly well for the last 5 years, something like that. Incredible, and it's still, like, I think the best overall DSLR you can buy. It was a magnificent camera, totally changed the game, and now we're 4 or 5 years from that. Nikon hasn't really done anything, right? They're due for another one, and so I'm looking at their history and I'm saying they're ready for, you know, they've been obviously putting energy into doing this. They know that mirrorless is where they have to be, and I think they're going to make it work. I'm not sure that the autofocus system is going to compete with this autofocus system yet because they are so far behind, but Nikon's done it before. I see no reason why they can't do it again, and that's just my opinion. We'll wait and see what happens in 5 or 6 months when I can get my hands on it and start to use it. But I have enough faith in Nikon that I'm holding on to my Nikon gear for the next 6 months, and then once I use that Z9, then I'm going to make a decision. It's either going to be I'm all in on Sony or I'm all in on Nikon. Right now I'm using dual systems. It's a little frustrating. It's a little weird, which is why I'm making this video. I would love to have better answers for you guys of like, here's what I think you should do. Here's what I don't even know what I should be doing. So I definitely don't know what you should do. But I'm very happy with what I've got right now, the situation, other than it's just too much stuff to manage right now. But I know this is a temporary situation for the next 6 months. And then this Z9 will be the decider for me. Once I get a chance to use it for a little while, it will be one or the other. The GFX system, the writing's kind of on the wall that will end up going away. So I feel bad about that because I love the GFX system and it's my best image quality system. But I just am kind of getting to the point where I don't think it's a big enough difference to justify carrying around a whole other system as well. So anyway, there's my thoughts, my discussion on the chaos that's going on in my gear bag. I'm at a loss here too. I'm not quite sure how to handle this stuff going forward because the Sony I don't enjoy using it as much as I enjoy using the Nikon. The Nikon's more familiar. I like the way it feels in my hand better. I like the materials they use better. I like the menu systems better. I'm more familiar with how to get around in them. The technology inside the Sony is, without a question, better, except for their IBIS. Their IBIS kind of stinks, if you ask me. That's kind of the only thing, other than ergonomic stuff, I think their IBIS is way behind Canon and definitely behind Nikon as well, in my experience. But the technology in here is amazing. The customizability of the buttons is amazing. Nikon isn't doing that as well as Sony is. But just autofocus, the zebras that you can see, overexposure in the viewfinder before you push the button is awesome. I use that a lot. So there's a lot going on that this has. The silent shutter, the stacked sensor that reads out really fast so you don't get rolling shutter, the 30 frames per second, 50 megapixels, all that stuff is really incredible. And so I'm really enjoying the images that come off of this. I don't necessarily enjoy using the camera as much as I do the Nikons. But hey, we can't have our cake and eat it too, or can we? Time will tell. So anyway, there's my thoughts on what's going on in my gear bag right now. I don't really even have any advice for you right now, other than if you're into like sports action wildlife stuff, Sony is doing better than Nikon right now. And if you want to shoot mirrorless, for sure, like the Nikon D6, wonderful autofocus system. It's a 20 megapixel versus 50. It's, I think, 14 frames per second versus 30. So even like Nikon's flagship DSLR is kind of behind the times on here. And it doesn't have this kind of science fiction-like autofocus that'll pick out the eyeball of the bird and the bear and the bison and just track it amazingly well. Birds in Flight is total game changer versus Nikon, even their D850. And so anyway, there's my thoughts. I keep rambling on about it, mostly because I'm still trying to work through my own thought process. But this, what it is static for now, other than if I get like a whim to sell the Fuji. I probably will end up doing that sometime in the next 6 months before the Z9 becomes available to help fund that purchase. And but this is kind of where I'm at right now. I don't have any plans to buy any other lenses or bodies until the Z9 comes out. So I'm going to stick with this. I'm obviously very happy with what I have access to. It's an incredible amount of really high quality gear. And anybody would be happy with any of this stuff. I'm just looking for that edge, the best possible thing I can get. This is what I do all day, every day, and I like to be current, and I want to have every possible advantage out there because I kind of need that to make the images that I want to be making. So anything I can do to help myself out, lessen the load on my abilities, and use the technology, I want to be doing that. So anyway, thanks for watching this. I hope this was kind of helpful just to clear up some of the questions about did you switch to Sony? And what in the world are you doing with the A1? And did Sony back the money truck up to your house and give you a bunch of money to start using Sony gear? No, none of that happened. I'm not sponsored by anybody, unfortunately. And I had to pay for all this stuff out of my own pocket. So it's a big deal. You know, there's a lot of money here, and you know, the good news is lenses hold their value pretty well, and these high-end cameras, bodies, will hold their value reasonably well for at least the next 6 months, and then I will make a decision, Sony or Nikon. Your guess is as good as mine, how that's going to turn out. So, again, I hope it was helpful. I'm still rambling, because I still don't know what to do. But that's what's going on. I'm shooting both systems right now. Sony for most of my long lens work, Nikon for most of my short lens work, GFX I'm still using occasionally when I need maximum image quality and I have time to slow down, take my time, and just enjoy myself. That's the kit I like to use for that. Take care. See you on the next video, where I'll be back out in the field making photos instead of talking about gear. Have a good one.